between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William Flick. I'm sitting in for Tom DeAmber tonight. Oh, there's a lot of stuff happening. I notice Ferguson is still bubbling over, I'll say. I see they caught the guy that shot at the police on camera with the gun in his hand, but I'm sure there are people that won't believe that. There's a lot of stuff. First, I want to talk about if you have a computer, you might try looking up something called Shell Game by Scott Bennett. He's a military intelligence analyst who spent time in jail for exposing Union Bank of Switzerland. Union Bank, we've heard that before, haven't we? Union Bank is who laundered Hitler's money during World War II with the Bush family and the Harrimans, Brown Brothers Harriman. Union Bank is a division of Brown Brothers Harriman. They've been caught funding ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because Hillary, Mr. Obama, or should I say Sotaro, and George W. Bush all knew about this, according to this military intelligence analyst. Now, I would say if you're interested, go to Shell Game hyphen Scott Bennett. And it would appear that, excuse me, several countries in the Middle East and the United States are funneling money to ISIS, along with weapons, through these accounts, through these people. Now, something else has come to light that I'd like to share with people is a website called the Alaska Minuteman, thealaskaminuteman.com. A gentleman by the name of Ralph Eberode. He is a lawyer of some sorts because he's won cases in court on the selling of our birth certificates to the banks for the loans. Now, those of you that have have birth certificates from the health department, I would say pick them up, look down in the lower left-hand corner below the seal, and you'll see a bank note company right there in the scrolling, very small lettering. That birth certificate is a bond that pays dividends. So we get to pay the bankers twice for using their money. We pay the interest payment by borrowing more of their money and giving it back to them. And then we get to pay them directly for nothing, for just using it because it's their money. We get to pay them every time we pay our income taxes. The income tax does not pay on the national debt. They borrow that money. The interest for the national debt is borrowed. There's all kinds of lying going on with that. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of these other sites I have here, nomorefakenews.com, Zero Hedge, geoengineering.com. I think that's it right there. But I have some stuff here I'd like to, first I'd like to say, I got this magazine at the news stand. Mad Magazine. The furious road to the White House begins here with a picture of Hillary. Pretty scary. And that's really how I envision her. There's pretty funny stuff in here. Donald Trump. They have a picture of Donald Trump. Blowhard with a vengeance. Now, I've always had a little bit of animosity toward Mr. Trump. He's a pretty arrogant guy. But lately he's been talking some sense about John McCain. John McCain was an out-of-control pilot, set the USS Forrestal aircraft carrier on fire, killing 100 seamen. He got out of it because his father and grandfather were both admirals. So Mr. Trump isn't totally off base, and I'm sure he had some information on Obama's birth certificate because he kept going after that. Now, here's another joke they have. You can hardly make it out. It's Mr. Clown Nose Bernie Sanders. The one-note samba boy, you know, stealing from people because they have no right to work and own things. And how does he know? Because he's a communist. He calls it socialism. Yeah, socialism. Socialism, i.e. communism, I don't care what you call it, you're a thief. Bernie Sanders can't add 300 million Americans to the welfare state without pissing off the rich ones. Well, I have to excuse that word. Now, I've heard Sanders say he's a member of the International, which is a communist group. But let's look into communism. Okay, I have a book here, The Unseen Hand. This gentleman that did this, Ralph Epperson, is an unbelievable researcher. In about 1846, both Marx and Engels, the two people that claim they wrote the Communist Manifesto, joined a group calling itself the Communist League, which sprang from what was known as the League of the Just. The latter, in turn, was an offshoot of the Parisian Outlaws League, founded by German refugees in that city. After a turbulent 10-year period, the League of the Just found its center of gravity, as Engels put it, in London, where he added a new feature came to the fore. From being German, the League became international. You'll notice London. London's the seat of all revolution and changes in the world. That's where the money powers, that's the seat of the money power in a place called the City inside of London, a small city-state. After the Illuminati was discovered in Bavaria, Germany, its members scattered throughout Europe. The League was an offshoot of the Parisian Outlaws League, founded by German refugees. One can only wonder if those refugees were the scattering Illuminati. In an event at the Second Congress of the Communist League, Marx and Engels were selected to write a party platform. Apparently, both encountered delays in achieving this result, and the two writers caused the Central Committee of the League to serve notice sharply that if the manifesto was not ready in February 1848, measures would be taken against Marx and Engels. Results followed. So Marx and Engels were given the task of writing a party platform for an already existing international group. The manifesto was not the work of an inspired nobody by the name of Karl Marx or Frederick Engels, for that matter, who suddenly sprang up from obscurity. Both were hired by an already existing group that now felt its power was strong enough for them to come out from the smoke-filled rooms and make their organization and its platform known to the people of Europe. But why was it so important for the manifesto to be completed by the 1st of February? Because the spontaneous revolutions that had already been planned all over Europe could spontaneously erupt on schedule. In fact, these spontaneously planned revolutions started on March 1st, 1848 in Baden, followed by others in Vienna, Parma, London, Spain, and Naples. 64 revolutions spontaneously erupted all over Russia during the year as well. So the manifesto of the Communist Party was issued in London, as an explanation of the cause of the revolutions already planned. Fortunately for the people of Europe, nearly all of these revolutions failed. Now, this is what I'm talking about. I personally owned a book written in 1798, 50 years before Marx and Engels. 50 years. It was called The Proof of a Conspiracy, written by a man named John Robison. Mr. Robison had 6 planks of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. He had 6 planks in that book. This is 50 years before Marx and Engels. The bankers created communism. The bankers, the monopolists, created communism. 50 years before Marx and Engels. The deal is, people think that it sprung up in Russia from the bottom up, grassroots. It did no such thing. It did no such thing. On other occasions, I've shown you the Reader's Digest story, Should We Bail Gorbachev Out? 1988 news story. In it, it admitted that the West was involved with the Communist Party from the beginning. The Caterpillar, the farm machinery, Ford Motors, General Electric, General Motors, Chase Manhattan, and many, many, many more were right there on the ground in the beginning of that formation of a communist country. When Trotsky was in New York, they boarded him on a train to Halifax, where they stopped him, and then the U.S. government gave permission for him to travel on. They gave him $10,000, which at the time was a considerable amount of money. And he went back to Russia to help establish the Bolshevik Revolution. This is fact. You can find it in the Congressional Record. It is fact. I've talked to people in Canada. They teach it in the regular schools. They teach it in schools. They don't teach it in America because they don't want you to know, because we haven't begun to become what they want us to. Mr. Lenin was in Germany. They brought them from outside the country and imposed communism on them. This is what Mr. Sanders wants to help the bankers do here. Oh, he's going to break up the banks. I don't care if you have 1,000 banks, if the money you put out is an all-debt currency. And I don't care if you use gold as a token. If you use an all-debt money system, you cannot pay it back, because the next money you borrow to pay that will be even more debt. And that'll go on what you already have. Because each dollar put out requires 2 back. The second one they do not put out. They do not put out the second dollar. So here's $1, give me 2 back, you get it from me, the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one, and you have no choice. They took the people's money in 1933 and left us with an all-debt currency, almost all-debt currency, which they later got rid of in the 1960s, any debt-free money. Ladies and gentlemen, debt and money are not the same thing. They are not the same thing. A debt money system is an oxymoronical system. Money is a receipt of wealth. It is a thing of barter. I guess I would have to go and tell you that the only free system is free enterprise, and the United States is not a free enterprise system. The United States is a monopoly system run by international bankers under their monopoly money. If you use the money in your pocket, you are part of their monopoly system. You are not operating in free enterprise. Free enterprise requires barter. In the Midwest, the bankers used to use their crops and beans and whatever. They would bring it to a warehouse, weigh it, get a receipt, use that receipt as money throughout the community. Now you could bring it back and you could redeem it. Can't find this right away, I guess. But in Ithaca, New York, they have a warehouse full of things that people brought to the warehouse, things of value. And what did the warehouse do? They gave them, they assessed the value and gave them credit units against, redeemable against the property in that warehouse. The people in that city created their own money. That's what we need to do. We need to create our own money system. We need to open up a warehouse because the crash is coming, ladies and gentlemen. We need to open up our own warehouse and have our own money to at least carry on business right here in the area. Then it should be exchangeable with the monies that are needed to get outside of the area, goods and services, or outside, outside of the country. That's what we need. Now, there's an act, there are a couple acts, the Sherman Antitrust and the Clayton Act. I've gone over this before in other shows. A federal law enacted in 1914, this is the Clayton Act, as amendment to the Sherman Antitrust Act, dealing with antitrust regulations and unfair trade practices. Okay, unfair trade practices. Now, when you hear me say it today, you're not going to think anything of it because you've been raised up in this criminal system. We are living in a monopoly. The bankers own and operate it. They own you through the agreement with the United States government to use you as collateral for the loans. If you don't believe me, go read the 1993 speech of the bankruptcy of the United States by Congressman James Traficant. What does the unfair practices, what are they? The act prohibits price discrimination. That means one person gets a good price, the other doesn't. It could also mean price fixing. Tying and exclusive dealing contracts. Everything in town, every gas station. When I was a kid, there were privately owned gas stations. They got independent gas. That what was on the open market, there were overruns for that was out there. There's no independent gas stations. Everybody's tied through a contract, exclusive dealing contracts like Dunkin' Donuts, like Kinney Drug and Rite Aid, which are probably, I'm pretty sure, owned by the same company. Total violation of the Clayton Act. It's still on the books. Mergers. Sound familiar? Companies joining together. And interlocking directorates. That's when you have the same people running a bunch of different businesses that are allegedly in competition with each other. This all happens within our country, which is a de facto government we have. One that maintains itself by display of force against the will of the rightful legal government and is successful, at least temporarily, in overturning the institutions of the rightful legal government by setting up its own in lieu thereof. The United States Code annotated Title 28, United States means a federal corporation. A corporation. You think you're living in a government. You're not. You're not. Here I have a cartoon out of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in 1911. I know you can't see it. Right here is Karl Marx and all around them are the people on Wall Street. Right next to him is Teddy Roosevelt. It was known, the Federal Reserve, the City of London, the United States government are all in cahoots screwing you over. And they have an army of police out there operating under the Uniform Commercial Code, not the Constitution, not common law. Common law was a set of laws that were passed down for thousands of years, precedent setting. We don't operate under that. We're operating under the law of the sea. Under the law of the sea, we have to be under that to be operating with an IOU money system. Now I want to go back. Well, here. This is an interesting little thing. Go to the British East India Company website. You'll notice the 13 stripes, just like our flag. These are British East India Company flags. Those 13 stripes represent the owners of the City of London, the banker families that own the city, that own the world, that get your birth certificates and distribute your income taxes as dividends against those to the banks over there that own you. You think they don't, but they do. Now, it's so pathetic. Here, it's a comic book written by the American Banking Association to confuse children in the schools. And how do they confuse them? It says, what do banks do with all the money that people save? And the teacher from the Banking Association that's at the school says, we loan some of the money to people who need to buy things. They don't loan anything to you. They give you your credit. Your credit. They create the money when you sign the paper. When you sign the mortgage, your signature creates the money. They give you your credit. Credit you used to have and used to shake a hand with, say, a car dealer. No longer. You have to have a third party. You don't go to the car dealer, shake his hand and make the deal. You go to the bank so that they can inflate the cost and take their share. It's called tribute, money you pay to a conqueror. It's what you pay in New York City to John Gotti so he won't burn your business down, or whoever's running his organization now. There is no money, just debt. Yeah. You have been sold into economic slavery long ago by way of your birth certificate. As a matter of fact, your own mother is listed as an informant on the certificate. You see, the federal and state constitutions all mandate that we can have paper money, but the paper that we use must be backed by gold and silver. That has not been the case for quite some time. Okay. When FDR took over, he declared a bank holiday and amended the 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act to include all citizens of the United States. Of course. Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress. This would be interesting for people that think they own their kids. Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress, first session, March 9th through June 5th, 1933. The ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. i.e., law amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Sound familiar? You buy a car, you got to get insurance, you have to have it inspected, everything, because you don't own it. How did I learn this? I was reading a piece from the Congressional Record to a coworker in 1995 in Littleton, New Hampshire. Across from me was a sheriff, a retiring sheriff from Lowell, Mass. That sheriff looked across and said, "Son, it's worse than you say." And I said, "Sir, what are you talking about?" He showed me his badge. He said he was retiring. He said he could get this off his chest finally. He said, "You do not own anything." He didn't explain the money part. He just knew what he knew, because he probably didn't know about how the money affected all this. The sheriff told me, "I don't own my car." And believe me, the manufacturer's statement of origin, which is supposed to stay with the owner of that car, goes to the Secretary of State's office. Your title is at the Secretary of State's office. They sent you a certificate of title. A certificate certifies that something exists. And it does, over at the State Department. Now, I have well, here it is, Our Town. Our Town, that's the Ithaca money, Our Town money. I have a document taken off the internet. It says, "Who is running America?" Let me just give you the first paragraph here. Under the doctrine of parens patriae, government as parent, as a result of the manipulated bankruptcy of the United States of America in 1930, all the assets of the American people, their person, and of our country itself are held by the Depository Trust Corporation at 55 Water Street, New York, secured by UCC commercial loans, which are then monetized as debt money by the Federal Reserve. It may interest you to know that under the umbrella of the Depository Trust lies the Seed Corporation, CEDE, the Federal Reserve Corporation, and the American Bar Association, the legal arm of the banking interests. Quite an extensive little document. You can find it at http://www.nidlink.com/bobhard/BOBHARD/usfraud.hotmail. I suggest you look it up. Has interesting things in there about how the lawyers know. I talked to a paralegal about how what she knew when I worked with one time. Almost everybody knows we're a corporation in the courtroom. We have no Bill of Rights. It's all a fraud. There hasn't been a constitution since the Civil War. There's nowhere in the Congressional Record can you find a reinstatement of the Constitution that our friend, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, took away from us through his illegal activities. Now, I got this out of a newspaper out of Washington, D.C. True money is simply a promise that you hold between the time you give it up something real and the time you get back something real. So you're trading goods or services for goods or services. Therefore, true money, including currency, credit, and stamped base metal coins, is not a particular substance. It is a representation of a promise of value. When money is created for use in a society, its creator must somehow place the money in circulation. There are only two ways money can flow from the money creator into the economy. The creator can give or spend money for something needful, such as the making of grants or paying of bills. In doing so, he exchanges newly created money for something real, such as property, goods, or services. The creator also can lend money into circulation. Okay, so we have the two ways it can get into circulation. He can spend it or he can lend it. That's a big difference. They spend it, we don't have to come up with a second dollar. It doesn't have to go to a bank and go out of circulation. It can stay in circulation and create prosperity, something we haven't had for a while, except for in the higher brackets. And Mr. Sanders thinks he has the answer to that. Meanwhile, he's tricking you. The bankers want communism. They want to sweep the crumbs off their table and make you happy. Here's your crumbs, people. Money loaned into circulation is not permanent money. Loaned, lent. It is a debt owed. Debt-based money must be returned to the creator bank, where it is recorded as a bookkeeping figure, which is gradually extinguished as the debt is repaid. Debt-based money does not stay in circulation long. Now, two ways to get the money in circulation: spend it or lend it. I carry in my wallet a greenback, a United States note from 1953. Eisenhower was in the White House. They were still putting out debt-free money. But the Federal Reserve had taken over most of the activity in the country, money activity. We have been tricked. We have been stolen from. And I use this a lot with my argument. In 1972, the Social Security Administration tells me that I made $4,782. I made $90 a week, $2.25 an hour. To have the buying power of that $4,782, you would have to be up around $40,000. That's an $800 paycheck a week. Excuse me. That $800 is what a lot of you are using for your whole monthly income if you're getting a check from the government. The same government that destroyed money. I had a gentleman tell me that, oh, the Democrats, they created Social Security and welfare, and they only had to do it because they were in cahoots with the banks, destroying the value, the buying power of your money. Of course, they had to come up with a way so you wouldn't run after them. So they came up with a way so they could lower the value, and you won't even know it. These kids running around getting their $700, $800 checks, and they're cool as a jewel. They are foolish. They are stupid. I'm trying to contain myself this week. But I have very little tolerance for people that pop babies out and then go down to the welfare office. In the words of Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, it's about time. It's about time you take care of your children. You get a job and you take care of your children. And you women that are complicit in this, you're just as responsible for the welfare of that child. Our country's becoming sickening. You think this is fun for me to come up here and say this stuff? I run into all you people all the time. I'm waiting for one of you to assault me. Because I believe that you can't deal with the truth that I'm speaking. we are in big trouble. Get off Social Security if you can still work. Get off welfare if you can work. Stop lying. You're only kidding yourself. Most people at work know you're lying. I run into people that are legitimately handicapped. You'll see me in town driving cab. You'll see me helping those people. So I'd like to switch gears a little here. And, excuse me. I've got a book called Prelude to Terror. I don't know where you can get it. I'm sure you can find it if you want to. I've got a bunch of things. Let's see here. All right. Now, we'll go back. You think they're telling you the truth? Most things, I have to say that most things on television are make-believe. They're make-believe. It's all made up. A large portion of the national news. Who knows how much of the local news? Probably not as much because you're right there where you can check on it. In 1995, when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, I saw the news before the national news got a hold of it. The local Channel 4 news, I got on tape. Boy, was I shocked. One of the women that had her children in the daycare center said to the newsman, "My children were in that daycare center. The BATF were tipped off. They didn't come to work that day." The news is being manufactured. Do not believe the national news. You can pick and choose what you want to believe, but hardly any of it is real. They're putting things and they're slanting them so you won't get the true picture. Okay, we're talking about here CIA and Saudi Arabia, okay? The CIA, when Jimmy Carter took office with Stansfield Turner, he put as the head of the CIA, knowing that that was coming, created a rogue CIA in Saudi Arabia. Remember the 14 of the 19 terrorists in 2001? Saudi Arabians, and as they would be, because Prince Turki and Sheikh Kamal Adham would play enormous roles in servicing a spy network designed to replace the official CIA while it was under congressional scrutiny when Carter was coming in. The idea using the Saudi royal family to bypass the American Constitution did not originate in the kingdom. Adham was initially approached by one of the most respected and powerful men in Washington, Clark Clifford, an uncle or a great uncle of a snitch here in town. I won't give you his name. Clark Clifford approached Kamal Adham and asked the Saudis consider setting up an informal intelligence network outside the United States during the investigations. Okay? So, the CIA became a rogue entity operating outside the United States. Saudi Arabia, where Osama bin Laden came from. Just a coincidence, huh? The news would tell you the truth, wouldn't they? This gentleman that wrote this book, Joseph Trento, he wrote the secret history of the CIA. This gentleman knows what he's talking about. Let me see what else I can pull up here. Excuse me. All right. The solution to create a totally private intelligence network using CIA assets until Carter could be replaced. Well, we know it kept on going. All right. Here, this will be a shock to you. Several Iranians who had been on the CIA payroll in the United States joined the Ayatollah Khomeini's staff in France, where they helped him prepare for a triumphant return to Iran. After 14 years in exile, Khomeini, with several CIA agents on his staff, returned to Iran. William Casey, preached a steady dive at how the increasing threat from communism in the United States' own hemisphere had gone unchallenged during the Carter years. Casey did not share with them the details of the October surprise or secrets like the cocaine trafficking that paid for some of the operations in Central America. Ladies and gentlemen, this is still going on. It's still going on under Operation Watchtower. You want to get the scoop on the CIA drug running? Look into Mike Ruppert, R-U-P-P-E-R-T, Cop versus CIA. I've had friends that will tell you, I had a friend in Vietnam who wrote me a letter when I was 18. I wish I had saved it. He watched them put the bricks of heroin into the body bags of the dead soldiers. This is going on now. We need a class action suit against the CIA, against the federal government. There are people dropping like flies from this poison they call heroin, and not a person cares. As long as you got yours, that's all that counts. I know I've held this up before. America's Nazi Secret by John Loftus. There are parts of this book right here that confirm what John Loftus says. The Bush family, under Vesting Order 248, signed by Franklin Roosevelt, they seized the operation of Union Banking. That was a division of Brown Brothers Harriman. E. Roland Harriman and Prescott Bush were both slapped on the hand with a fine. And Prescott Bush went on to bring all the Nazi whack job scientists back to our country. We have been had, ladies and gentlemen. You need to wake up. I've come in here several times for Tom. And believe me, you have no idea who this gentleman is, Tom D'Ambra. Risks his life. This isn't easy to do. I could walk out here today, start my car, and a bomb go off. If enough people start listening to this show, or before enough do, it could be the end of me. Here's from David Rockefeller's book, Memoirs. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. Okay, listen, some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, a one-world government. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. Some believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it. What does it take? Does he need to come to your house and shoot your grandmother before you get mad? What does it take? What does it take? All right. Here's the Federal Reserve, okay? These are the banks that bought the AAA stock in 1914, not the banks that get their 3% stock holdings in the Federal Reserve. These guys make the profits off of you. Rothschild Bank of London, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam, Lazard Brothers of Paris, Israel Moses Seif Banks of Italy, Chase Manhattan, which is Morgan Chase now, Goldman Sachs. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Lehman Brothers, Kuhn Loeb. Ladies and gentlemen, Kuhn Loeb financed the Russian government in the early days. Elihu Root was the CEO of Kuhn Loeb in the late teens, early 20s. I can't remember the exact date. He went to Russia with 20 million in gold and gave it to Trotsky and Lenin. And that couldn't have been a real hard thing to do, because the Tsar's gold, 450 million ounces, were in the New York and Chicago banks. All they had to do was overthrow the Tsar. Communism was brought to you by the bankers. Here's their latest dupe. Here's their latest dupe. Go out and vote for them, because you can have the crumbs. Their crummy little $800 a month or $700 a month check to sell out your country. I'm trying to stay calm here today. I got a lot of feedback from people that watched the show last week. How I could be so upset, and the rest of you think that you got it made, that the United States government and this idiotic governor we have and these ridiculous fantasy land Democrats and some of them Republicans, they don't care about you. They do not care about you. They own your car. They own your house. They're getting their cut. That's all they care about. Mr. Sanders is a dupe of the bankers. I confronted him about the money system, how they extinguish it out of existence, how we had to keep going further and further in debt. Here we are, about $13 billion more after I talked to him. And what's he going to do? He's going to break the banks up. It doesn't matter to the bankers. You're still going to use the same amount of money. You're still going to pay the same amount of interest. You're still going to give the money back to them and have to borrow more so we have an economy. What's it going to take? What's it going to take for you people to wake up? Mr. Sanders is a joke. Anybody that professes communism is an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. Communism is not from the little people. Free enterprise is. If you had no government whatsoever, no government, and you grew 40 acres of corn, you'd have maybe 20 acres for your livestock, your family, and yourself. The other 20 would be barter. You would bring that to a market and barter. They might give you a piece of paper so you can bring it around so people wouldn't have to obtain the corn. But that slip of paper would make it redeemable, and a lot of people would take that slip of paper, especially a cereal maker, wouldn't it? All I'm saying is free enterprise is from the bottom up. It's natural law. Natural law. Free enterprise, gravity, childbirth, natural law. Now, we don't go by natural law. We go by the law of the sea, the law of IOUs and collateral. I don't know what it's going to take for the bulk of the people in this country to stop watching regular television, start looking into what's really going on. I'm trying to tell you people that we are up the creek and it's about to hit the fan, and what are you going to do about it? We can try creating our own basic money system right here. Our town. I believe that Hardwick has Buffalo dollars. These little systems may become necessary in the future. We are in big trouble. The commodity prices are falling, gasoline, and I know that sounds great, but believe me, the money system, our economic system, is dependent on the prices the way they are fixed right now. If the prices go down, countries go into bankruptcy, less money floats around, and it becomes a depression, and we are on the verge of it. What you saw in 2008 was exactly the same thing that happened in 1920, 21, 22. The United States had a quick dip, and we went into a depression, but we came out of it exactly the same way, by them allowing money to flow freely back out of the banks, low interest, until 1929, and then we crashed. 22 to 29, 7 years. 2008 to 2015, 7 years. There's a law in Judaic culture. I'm pretty sure it's called the Shemitah. There's every 7 years, there is a reset on the economic system. Sometimes it's not as big as other times. But if you look at it, 1987, we had a crash. 1994, we had a reset in our money because of the 30% collapse of the housing market. The value of the housing went down 30% in the beginning of the 90s. 94, we had to reset our money. 1994. What's next? 2001. Do you really think that was something that happened? It was the Arabs, the bankers were behind the whole deal to throw off everybody because they knew a crash was coming. They let it look like it was the attack on Wall Street, on the trade towers that brought down Wall Street. 2008, 7 years later. You think I'm off, do you? You think I'm off? You think I'm crazy? I know there are those people in town that like to call me crazy. Of course, they're dumber than a box of rocks. They're lucky they can tie their shoes. Oh, they know how to make money, but they don't care where it comes from or what it even represents. What it represents is bondage. Now, here's the Money Trust investigation. Here's what it says at the beginning. This table shows the affiliations of 18 selected financial institutions. Let's see how many of these own the Federal Reserve. J.P. Morgan, First National Bank, Guarantee Trust, Bankers Trust, National City, Kuhn Loeb, National Bank of Commerce, Hanover National Bank, Chase National Bank, Astor Trust, New York Trust Company, Blair and Company, Spire and Company, Continental Commercial National Bank, First National Bank Chicago, Illinois Trust, Kidder Peabody, Lee Higginson. A couple of them are there. A couple of them. What is this? Money trust investigation. What it did was it proved there was a government of the banks. That's what it proved. Now, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? We're going to all sit comfortably, and we're going to say, I got mine, because I know a lot of you are like that. There's no empathy, there's no sympathy, there's no altruism anymore. People don't care about their neighbor. They don't even hardly care about their country. This country is supposed to belong to us. It belongs to bankers and their lackey politician friends like Mr. Scumlin, Mr. Sanders, the bankers' new clown front man. Get your crumbs while you can from the banker's front man. I think I've said enough to let you people know what's going on. It's in your court. It's on you now. You can sit back and say, I got mine and everything's cool and the world's going to be there tomorrow, but the world as you know it is not going to be there tomorrow. It'll still be a world, but you're going to wonder where your next meal is coming from because you've let this happen. You've looked the other way while they force newspeak and doublethink and 1984 right down your throat. George Orwell, he must be happier than anybody. He must be rolling, cheering in his grave over what the American people have allowed to happen. Now, I have to tell you, I'm not happy. And I've shown it on this program several times. And all I'm looking for is for you people to get active, to wake up out of this slumber, to stop thinking that communism is the answer. You can't find one place where it worked. Every communist country has been bailed out, with the exception of Cuba, where people get $20 a month to live on. So for now, I'll say goodbye and have a nice life. And I want to thank Tom D'Ambra, who's a saint in a sea of ridiculousness. And good night.
Read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.